Now that we've discussed some of the basic tools that I use in my black and white workflow, I'm going to go into more depth about my more advanced techniques like SGM, ISGM, and creating presence. Creating presence is all about enhancing a subject in your image by giving it more luminosity and by giving it more depth, or create an illusion of depth. And I do that by defining edges and also by altering tonal relationships. That's the way to create more depth in a subject in your image. So I'm going to show you what I exactly mean with that by using this photo of my Salk Institute shot. Well, first, this is a part of the building on the right-hand side of my Salk Institute shot. This is before. This is how it looks like when I took the photo. And this is after I've applied the technique. So what you see here, if you look closely at the original image, is that the buildings on this side almost have the same tonal zone. So there's no real edges in the buildings. It basically looks like one whole big wall. But if you look at the second one, then you see that there's more depth and that in the separate parts of the building, and also there's well, the lines, the edges of the building are more clear and more sharp. So how did I do that? Well, basically what I do is to select all the different parts of the buildings, like this one, like that one, and like that one. And then I alter the tonal relationship per part of the building. So I made this part a little bit lighter, and I made this part a little bit darker. Then again, I made this part a little bit lighter, darker at this side, and lighter and darker here again. And here the same. So this would be the effect after you've applied that technique, as compared to this one, which looks more like a whole complete wall, one big wall with no edges at all. The technique I use for that is called the SGM technique, the selective gradient masking technique, and I'm going to demonstrate that in the next part of this tutorial. But first I'm going to show you another part of the application of this creating presence ID with another image. So have a look at the other sample that I have here for you. This one is from another photograph I took in Rotterdam. So this is how the photo looked like before. So basically what you see is here a very basic shape of a building, with the left-hand side of the building a little bit lighter than the right-hand side of the building. So there's not much depth in this building. But when you apply the idea of creating presence and by adding more depth and changing and altering the tonal relationships, then you would get something like this. You see the difference before and after. So what I did here basically is I created a selection for this part of the building, and I created a selection for that part of the building. And I made this part of the building a little bit lighter on that side, and I made this part of the building a little bit darker. So what you would get as effect is that this line here would look more sharper. So what I did here is to define an edge, and this edge. So this would be the result. So what you see here is a more sharply defined edge, a more sharply defined line. So to add to the illusion of more depth in this building. So that's basically the idea. To show you how extensive I use this technique, I have another example for you. This is my frozen music shot. This is a photo that won me the first prize at the International Photography Awards. So this is how the image would look like before. So it's basically a nice building if you look at it this way, with all the nice lines and the intersection of lines, the waves, so to speak. So that's something that really drew me to the subject, and that's also something that I really wanted to stand out in the image. Then when I applied the idea of creating presence, then this would be the result that you would get. So what I've basically done here, and I will show you the original image once again. Well, these parts are, well, almost flat gray. And the lines, the waves of lines, really don't stand out in this image. So I wanted to have those lines stand out by making this part much lighter, these parts, and making the lines even darker than they are. So this would be the result. And in order to come to this effect, I needed to create all separate selections for all these parts of the image. And I'm going to show you it right away. I'm going to load the selection, this one. So you see here all the selection of all the separate parts of the building. And maybe it's even better visible when I edit it in the quick mask mode. So here you see that I've all selected all the lines of the buildings and all the white parts of the buildings. Well, actually all the parts that should have been white in my building. So this is how I created more presence in this building. And it's done by well, creating all the selections and altering the tonal relationships between parts of the building. A very important technique to create presence in my black and white workflow is called SGM, or selective gradient masking, and I'm going to demonstrate that in the next part of the tutorial.